My name's Robbie Luckett. I'm director of the Margaret Walker Center and professor of history at Jackson State University. Today is August the 26th, 2021. It's approximately 9:36 a.m. Central Time. I'm joined by Ahmad Ward. Ahmad, for the purposes of our record, would you state your name and spell it for us?
Sure. Ahmad Ward is Ahmadward.
Do I have your permission to record this interview?
Absolutely.
Let's begin with some biographical information, background info. Can you tell me about how you grew up, where you were born, what your family background was like, your education, those kinds of things?
Sure thing. I am from a little town in northeastern North Carolina called Elizabeth City, which has recently been in news for all the wrong reasons with some unfortunate police shooting. But it's a small town, no more than 19 to 20,000 people through the course of my childhood and probably even now. Really close to the Virginia state line. So I had family in North Carolina and family in the Tidewater area, Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Newport News. So spent a lot of time going back and forth. If we want to do anything fun, we had to go across the state line and go to Virginia. So we spent a lot of time doing that. And my father's family, most of the people on his father's side are in Virginia Beach and still are to this day. And so growing up there was, small town. Everybody was in the same situation, pretty much. I would say the racial makeup for school, everything is pretty much even throughout elementary, middle, high school. We were the city, which is really funny if you think about what's around us, that we were called the city. And people actually thought that we were in the surrounding areas, thought that we were stuck up because we lived in Elizabeth City, which if you ever saw Elizabeth City, you would bust out laughing. Anybody thought that. But I mean, that was the deal. Went to Elizabeth City State University, which is HBCU there. You always want to leave town, and I wanted to leave town, but I wouldn't trade those 4 years at state for anything. I learned a lot, got a chance to do a lot of really cool things. So I'm a Mighty Viking forever, and went to Hampton for grad school. Ended up tripping and falling into this museum studies situation. I was trying to find something to do. There was a lot of opportunity for art teachers in North Carolina in the late 90s. That was not something I wanted to do because I thought they were, glorified babysitters at the time. Those knocked the art teachers. But just at that particular time, teachers were dropping kids off to the art room and leaving, and then, whatever. We don't care what you do. Just don't send them back to me until you're finished. And I just didn't want to do that. And one of my advisors talked to me about a museum studies program at Hampton. And I was like, I don't know any Black people who are doing museum studies. What are you talking about? Like, what is this? I was like, I don't know what you want me to do. Because I was going back and forth between, I actually thought about art therapy, but the psych classes are like, I had to double back and do a lot of that stuff. Commercial art was so cutthroat at the time because I was an art major. So was leaning towards photography. In fact, I really came within a hair's breadth, really, of becoming a photographer. And I thought it would be a cool thing to do. You can chart your own course. I love taking pictures at the time. I had a nice little Nikon that was going around me all the time. And I had one of my advisors who was a photographer, so I was trying to learn from him. Spent a lot of time in dark rooms. I know people don't know what dark rooms are now, but I'm glad ours on campus had this revolving door that kind of shut you out, because I'm glad they didn't hear me in there cursing and and raising Cain when my stuff was coming out, trying to get these chemicals straight in 1996 or whatever it was. So I went to go check out Hampton, and I was amazed by what they had in their collection and all of this tremendous African-American art. And, I mean, the banjo lesson is there. Henry O'Chan, I didn't even realize for real. You walk in a room, there it is, as big as life. And you got all this stuff from Spiral and Archibald Motley, and you've got Elizabeth Catlett and John Biggers, who's like one of my Biggers is probably my favorite artist of all time. So I kind of fell in love with being around it all the time and went and got into the program, 2-year program, graduated from that, and had an opportunity to go into the park service. They actually offered me a job, but I also had this potential opportunity in Birmingham, where one of my advisors had shared a resume with Dr. Lawrence Peugeot at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. And it became between Birmingham and Boston. I would have been at the Northeast Museum. What is it? Technical Center. It's been years, so I can't really remember. But I'd have been stationed in Boston. I would have gone throughout New England, doing things at different parks. It sounded really exciting. Had a decent, it's going to start at like a GS5 with a 3-year renewable. I mean, it was not terrible. We're talking about 1999. And then my paperwork got lost, and I had to get it signed before graduation. And I kept asking, hey, I don't have my stuff. I need to fill this thing out so I can get it. And I couldn't get a response. And so that small voice tells you, man, don't tell Birmingham that you don't want this job. Thankfully, because I went to graduation rehearsal at Hampton. It was a Saturday morning. Did the little run through, came home, had 2 messages. I was doing an internship at Yorktown at the Colonial National Historical Park, where Cornwallis surrendered. Right. 2 messages on my answering machine, because this is old and I'm old. One of them was, hey, we don't have your paperwork for Boston. So instead of your GS5, we had to bring you on at GS3 with a 1-year renewable, which means I would have been living in Boston, but not eating. The second message was from Yorktown saying, hey, you're about to graduate. This internship is about to be over. So you probably got another week to be with us. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna lose 2 jobs here. So I placed a call to the person that reached out to me from Birmingham. Say, hey, if that position is still open, I'd love to talk to somebody about it. And I took a nap, man. I'm like, okay, God, this is on you. I'm out. Took about an hour nap. And an hour later, I got a call from Angela Fisher Hall, who was running the education department at Birmingham. I'm like, hey, I will send you some. Actually, it was Friday morning. She said, I will overnight something to you so you have it. So that happened on Friday. Saturday morning, I had a package from Birmingham. And so I was like, oh, okay. I drove down sight unseen 750 miles to Birmingham for an interview. And the rest is history. I had to tell Boston, look, thanks, but no thanks, because that's messed up. Because I tried to get paperwork from you. And here's the moment where you just maybe a little too cocky for your own good in hindsight. But Yorktown tried to keep me, right? Because I had a great supervisor, Richard Raymond. I don't know where you are now, but bless you. And they offered me half part-time as a museum tech between Jamestown and Yorktown, and half-time working the booth. Now the booth is in the middle of nowhere on a land bridge, like Camp Crystal Lake. Like you're expecting Jason Voorhees to come out the water and kill you, right? And so there's this little booth there where you're taking tickets. And my 23-year-old mind was like, I just got a master's degree. I'm not taking no tickets. Right. But again, when you get older, you're like, man, that wasn't a bad deal. But you're young and stupid. So you're like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm not working. I just got a master's degree. I'm not working the booth, taking tickets. They can get anybody to do that. Right. And so I said no. And went down to Birmingham. This is the furthest west I have been. I know Birmingham is not west at all, but at that point, that was the furthest west I'd ever been. And went down there for a couple days. And before I left, Dr. Peugeot offered me a job. And I was there for 18 years, which is still crazy.
I want to come back to Birmingham, but back up just a second, because this is also being used in my Intro to Museums class at Jackson State this semester. And of course, you've talked about you're getting a master's in museum studies from Hampton. I just would like for you to talk a little bit more about that experience and what the curriculum was like, and kind of what you did in that program. And then we'll come back to Birmingham. I think my students in particular would be interested to know what that was like.
Absolutely. Hampton was amazing. Unfortunately, we were like the next to last class, so people actually blamed us for the program stopping. And tongue in cheek, but also some seriousness in there. But they just the staff couldn't keep it going, unfortunately. But a lot of people came out of that program who are doing tremendous work right now. It was so hands-on, and we got a chance to do everything. I did an internship at the museum, and so Jeffrey Bruce, who's been at the Tubman Museum in Macon forever, but Jeffrey helped me get started. I worked with him on exhibitions. I got a chance to actually like do the fabric boards for the new African exhibit. Man, that was cool. Because Hampton's collection has African, Pacific, Oceania, a large Native American collection. They got an AfricanAmerican collection, have everything at the Hampton Museum. And so I had a chance to do all of the stuff, change lights, do labels, fix pieces. And it was just a really cool thing to work on. And the classes were, of course, you had that, the theory and the structure and all this good stuff, and independent studies, but they really gave us every single aspect of museum situations there. And I really appreciate that program because I felt like I had all the knowledge base that I needed. And as part of that, I got a chance to participate in the Conserve a Legacy event. I can't even call it a program, but it was like an event where there was some Dick Powell from Duke and Jock Phillips from the Phillips Museum in Andover. I don't know if Phillips is his last name. It's been so long, brother. But they came together to do this thing where there was money given to help support the conservation for the collections of HBCUs across the South. And so, I mean, just some of the places of Fisk and Talladega and Tuskegee, people had all these long, like Talladega had this, tremendous like Hale Woodruff stuff. And the whole point was trying to conserve all of this stuff. So I got a chance to go to Boston. I still ended up in Boston. That's why I thought I was going to end up there like a year after that. But that's how it started. I was at this program in 98 where we spent 6 weeks 6 weeks and 4 weeks in Andover, the 20 miles outside Boston, and then 4 weeks near the Clark Conservatory in Williamstown, Massachusetts, which is in the middle of nowhere. Okay, well, I shouldn't say that because Williams College has like this big acting, a lot of actors go there, but it's not. I mean, myself and the two ladies from Fisk and Tuskegee, we were the only Black people in a 30-mile radius. We were at Williamstown. Everybody knew who we were. Everybody. And so we walk around and say, oh, there go the interns. Like, man, we sticking out like sore thumbs here. I'm glad it feels somewhat safe. But that program was great. One of the things that was really cool was I got to work on a David Driscoll piece. It was this painting. It was mixed media, had a book on it. And so I'm cleaning this Driscoll piece, right? And then, let's see, that's 98. Years later in 2011, in Birmingham, we get this Driscoll exhibition of prints, like 77 prints that I actually checked to hang. Man, one of the greatest moments in my professional life. David Driscoll comes to Birmingham, walks to this exhibition and says, this is incredibly well hung. Man, my head wouldn't fit through the door. Man, my head is already big enough as it is. But I'm talking about, I'm walking around the next day like, I know y'all heard what he said. So, oh man, I was no good for at least 36 hours. Like that's David Driscoll, So, oh yes, sir, I hung that, oh, you did a great job. Anyway, Hampton really got me ready to do all the things that happened in Birmingham. And that program, oh man, there's been some conversation about restarting it. Vanessa's doing a great job at the museum. Vanessa Jackson Ward, who's director, and she was there when I was there doing some instruction, but it had a different, position at the time. But I don't know if there's enough engine to get it started. But it'd be great if that could be redone because it has such a rich history. And Gene Ziegler, who was the director forever, and Mary Lou Holmgren, who took over, and then William Harvey, the president. I mean, they saw the value in that museum studies program. And the class, I mean, there's probably 9 of us, 8 of us, maybe as a whole, who were in that cohort, but we just got a chance to do so many things while we were there. It was really cool. And so if you can find a program like that, that is great. And there are some out there, but unfortunately, there's not as many at HBCUs as it used to be. Sadly.
Yeah, not very many at all. And even our students are in a traditional history program taking this class. But
right.
So you came straight out of the master's program at Hampton and moved to Birmingham to work at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute.
Yep.
And spent 18 years there. Talk about your career in Birmingham and the work that you did and its kind of evolution over that time.
Look, the funny part is I went to Hampton to avoid teaching. And the first thing I did when I got out of grad school was be the education assistant at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. And all I did was go into classroom after classroom after classroom after classroom, talking about the civil rights movement. So, I mean, it was like, God laughs at us all the time. And so I know he had a good belly one at that one, because I spent the first year and a half in Birmingham. That's how I learned the city. And this is, I didn't have a GPS, so it was like MapQuest. I'm printing out pieces of paper. I'm driving. And I had, I wish I had a picture of this, but I had a slide machine. Okay. Old school. It was this big. Yeah. I nicknamed him Charlie. It was a thing. You had a screen, so you can watch the slides on the screen. If you close the hatch, you put it open, you could project it. And I had about 6 presentations. I had Dr. King. I had one on that I helped develop on science, technology, Black inventors. I had, the Children's Crusade, women in the movement, all kinds of stuff. And so Charlie and I went on every inch of the greater Birmingham metro area and some outside, talking about the movement. I had a slide projector, man. That is a slide projector, okay? But we were effective, and I got a chance to do some other stuff in place. And, the thing that satisfied my art itch, because, I thought I would go to an art museum. But the thing that helped me is they allowed me to start working with the exhibition program that they had. And eventually I'll be their first curator of exhibitions because they were fortunate to get a grant, some kind of funding from the Board of Education that was going to pay for a person to do outreach in Birmingham City Schools. But he just couldn't do anything outside of Birmingham City. So Jefferson County is huge. So I was doing the Jefferson County schools and working on the exhibitions. And so I had a chance to learn from our superintendent who was hanging all the stuff. And I had a chance to really do all of the things around setting exhibitions up and also hanging. So I learned a lot about hanging. I learned a lot about hanging from Jeff, but David just kind of reinforced how to put all these things together. And so they had a 13 show a year program. It was murderous. They only had exhibitions. There was 2 galleries. And they were switching out shows every 2 months, man. It took me 5 years to get out of some of those annual things, that the agreements they had put up. And I finally got them to stretch it out to like quarters, or in some cases longer than that. It took me forever to get rid of some of those situations because I'm telling them this is too much. Oh, by the time you get stuff up, you take it down. And so fortunately, they gave me some leeway on this, and we were doing it. Look, man, you're a nonprofit. You're using duct tape, paper clips, and spit to do all kind of stuff. And so we were able to look. We put on some nice shows and we were figuring out any kind of way possible to get it done. And then curatorial assistants and a couple of these other small things where you can go get a show for like $1,000 and have it for 3 months. Those places saved our lives too, because we were able to pull in some things that make things different. You know, the permanent exhibition is not going to change, but those galleries give you a chance to do all the kind of stuff. And Dr. P and Angela gave me just free will to do some things that were probably a little testy. We had a police brutality show in 2002. So of course, it's not a new thing. And we had a public event, and we were able to convince the chief of police to come to this public event. Place was packed. My director, Dr. P, Dr. P has never been nervous. Okay, never. But he was antsy because we had this activist that was on the panel. The artist, Cassandra Griffin McIntyre, had taken pictures from the Amadou Diallo situation, like the fallout. And that was the show. And so to buoy the show, we had stats from different cities around the country where they had police brutality situations. And so, the community meeting room usually sits about 80 people on the floor. There was like 150 people in this room, people hanging out in the hallways. And the funny part was the activists and the chief really didn't get into it. But we had one person from Falun Gong. If you know anything about Falun Gong, this is the religion that's been under all kind of assault in China for years. And they've had situations of police brutality. So this guy was here and he showed a video, and we gave him a chance to show an international scope. Oh my, I had people in the crowd go crazy. Like, why is he here? We should be talking about Black people. I mean, just went nuts. But fortunately for me, there was a foot soldier in the crowd that everybody respected. Marched with, and I can say names here. We worked on a book project, and I had to keep names out of it. But Abraham Woods, who marched with King, was marched with Shuttlesworth when Shuttlesworth was running things in Birmingham. Reverend Woods stood up and said, "Wait a minute, we talking about police brutality. This man is dealing with brutality in his country. He came over here to escape it. We got to give him a chance to talk. It's not just about what's happening here. This is fair for us to do." And it quieted everybody down. And I'm so glad that he did that, because it was about to go crazy in there. But he stepped up and everything calmed down. And I was like, man, thank you so much, Wood. You saved my life, because I know my Dr. P is like, see what you did? So without going into a whole lot of detail, we were able to do stuff on AIDS, the homeless, immigration, the undocumented, especially with immigration, covered a lot of topics. But like 10 years ago, we took a shot on something, and we did this thing called Living in Limbo, lesbian families in the Deep South. Now, we had a show on lesbian families in Birmingham, Alabama in 2012. And that one probably was the most consternation out of all of the shows that we had. A lot of the folks, these are just regular poses. A lot of the folks would have their backs turned because they weren't out, or they didn't want to have people, have issues with them. But Carolyn Shearer and Ellen Dossett put this show together. Carolyn had done some work with us before, and we couldn't have done that show 5 years before then. But things had happened, things were changing. Julian Bond had just come out and say that LGBT rights are civil rights, which added fuel to our fire. Dr. P was like, look, we're getting some grief because we didn't have enough stuff on LGBT. We had some representation in the show, in the exhibition, but not enough. He's like, hey, let's do it. It's controversial, but let's do it. That's the thing I appreciate about Doc, because I would come with some ideas or we would talk about stuff, and more often than not, okay, let's go for it. And when we announced it, we brought in a PR firm to do this, help us with this. He announced it on a Friday. Between Friday afternoon and Monday morning, he had 125 letters from across the country. Only a handful of them were negative. But what happened with this, we graduated to these big banners on the side of the building. So I had a 20-foot long banner of a young lady in a Marine Corps uniform and her significant other. And they were just face to face. It was just a hug. There was no kiss. It was just, oh man. People stopped me at the stoplight. And, man, you got that big band out there. What's going on with you? I mean, just people see me in public going crazy. And my fallback was always, only Dr. Peugeot and myself could respond to the press or anybody. We decided nobody else was gonna talk about it except us. And my whole thing, well, after I let them talk, okay, can you say to these people have never been discriminated against? And I'm like, we're the Civil Rights Institute. We cover everything. Can you say they haven't been discriminated against? Well, no. Well, there you go. I wouldn't get into the Bible thumping. I wouldn't get into some of the other stuff that people had. I'd always say, can you say that these people are not being discriminated against? And I rarely got an answer to that. So that's what kept us through that whole thing. And the organization benefited from that because it was a hard call. I mean, you know, we're talking about a movement that is, you know, this buoyed by the church, and to do a show like that in the Bible Belt, man, it was deep. It was so deep that we had to create a different lane for any school groups who did not want to walk past the Woolfolk Gallery. So once they finished the exhibition, we had people stationed at a staircase. It took them right downstairs and out the front door, so they wouldn't have to walk by it and look in the room. So we had to do all that stuff, but it was still worth it in my opinion. It gave the organization some more national, international recognition. Carolyn has set that show at all different places since then. That and the time we brought the Declaration of Independence in, are probably two of the biggest shows that we did during the time. That was a lot. You go through the whole thing, but that was a lot.
No, that's great. And I want to stay here for a second because you've kind of gotten into one of my future questions. I want to come back to Birmingham in a second and your career. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, in fact, the work we do, particularly in the Black Museum field. Inevitably, we're coming across complicated, controversial topics, at least topics that are controversial in kind of the mainstream white world of museums, right, and public history. So, and especially now in the post-George Floyd era, right, like we're brought into these conversations. So I'm wondering if you might talk about your philosophy is about how you approach those topics in the work that you do.
We try to go, well, historically, I had a reputation as somewhat of a firebrand, but I wasn't one of those people kicking over furniture. We were just being really real and upfront with the advocacy of museums. And you say the museums are not advocates, right? Because, I mean, technically we don't take sides, but you are also practicing the advocacy with what you display. And so we did all these things. And, you know, now I'm in Hilton Head, South Carolina, working with this project called the Historic Mitchelville Freedom Park. Mitchellville was the first self-governed town of formerly enslaved people. in the United States, established in 1862. They had their own laws. They had schools and churches and businesses, and all this is happening during the Civil War, during enslavement. Crazy situation. We're building from scratch, from the ground up. But even with the programming that I'm doing here, I feel, and this is going to sound a little fun, that I have some more limitations with some of the stuff here than a lot of things I was able to get away with in Birmingham, but it's because of what organization it was. And Birmingham is like a fairly progressive place in the middle of the state of Alabama. And so there's some topics, and I have had people say, hey, look at your support, because it's different now. I'm running the ship, and we're figuring out how we can talk about certain issues and not turn off your donor base, which is a line that I didn't really have to follow when I was in Birmingham all those years. We were just throwing stuff in people's faces, and talking about all kinds of things, like openly antagonizing people with the subject matter. So like there was some going back and forth about whether or not we should do something about what happened after George Floyd, but we found a way to do it. And we brought in Hassan Kwame Jeffries, who's, amazing person. We did a virtual, because this is during COVID, so we did a virtual spotlight. Thank heaven for StreamYard. That thing, it's a great service. And we talked about the relationship between African Americans and law enforcement. And I know I made some people nervous, but man, I mean, there was like 3,000 or 4,000 people that watched that. It's the biggest virtual thing we've done. And we had it set up so it went to Facebook Live, and so man, we got a lot of feedback on that, and we were able to do it in a way that allowed us to talk. This spotlight program came up with gives us a chance to kind of move into current issues and not delve. We don't have to make all these direct correlations, right? And so we've had to be judicious with it. But I'm one of these people that's like, if it's out there and you're in a museum field, museums should be reflecting what's happening currently in the world. So you have to talk about these things. And so we'll have to do it. Like I'm sitting here now trying to determine how or if we deal with the Afghanistan situation, and what kind of tack we take on it. There's a couple other things that popped up. Like, do we bring? Because I always try to bring in a pro-con situation, because it's neutral. We just provide information. But I think July 6th situation scared people off too much. So so we decided not to mess with that. But there's gonna be some other ways for us to do it. My modus operandi on these things is to put it out there in an objective manner so people can make their own decisions. Like, we're gonna talk about all this stuff, but we never do it in a way where I'm slanting it towards, one direction or another. Now, it might happen during the course of the program, but that's going to be whoever's making the best point. If I try to make sure there's someone who is taking if it's an either or side. Sometimes it's not. We talk about humanity. There's no sides to somebody's humanity. But if it's I'm for the, or like, let's say we haven't done anything on Confederate statues, but let's say we did. Someone who thinks you should keep them up, someone who think you should take them down. We would provide that opportunity to talk, and then let the visitor/viewer decide for themselves. I think you should not be scared to address topics. Man, let me tell you, I know we couldn't have pulled off that LGBT show not 4 years before we did it. Like, seriously, we would have got creamed. But the world changed. The world continues to change. And so now you have organizations who would never touch these things. After what happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmad Ward, even like for-profit corporations, they're shifting. The world is shifting. And now it's like, oh, we got to pay attention. We have to pay attention. because, after the Milwaukee Bucks decided to shut all sports down last year, like, anytime you start touching the money, like, oh my gosh, we got to take you seriously. And so there are ways for the museum field to be taken seriously by just not being scared to address these programs. You can still do this in a way that protects you. And I think we've been able to do that as much as we can with issues. And now I'm battling, I shouldn't say battling with my staff, but I'm going back and forth with my staff about this COVID situation. And I think their concern is where we are. And some people are just like, man, I don't know how you do this without it being an issue. But I got to tell you, if we were already built with an interpretive center and everything was already up and structured, I would have already had a forum. So part of this is time and place. Now, if we get this money to roll in here in the next, 6 to 8 months, and I get some buildings out there, then, things change. So I think you gotta understand your situation, but you should never move away or shy away from these things. Now, my last word on it, some of these organizations will have board members or donors that could apply pressure, and you got to make the best determination for your organization with that too. Like, you may want to do something really bad, but if the person who's been supporting your your education department or your exhibition program for 20 years is like, I don't think you should do that. You'd never want to be a slave to that, or enslaved to a organization, or held to a situation where they're telling you what to do. But you have to think about it. Like, how much is this going to affect us if we do this? Can I reasonably talk to this person and say, hey, look, this is how we're going to set it up? And maybe sometimes it's just laying out an outline. This is the scope of the program. This is how we're going to do it. So what do you think? And if they're still being unreasonable, then you got to make a decision. Is it worth that funding to do this program? Sometimes it might be.
Yeah. Thanks for that. There's something you said up front that I think is important, especially for students to understand. And it's a movement now, right? The museums are not neutral, right? And our spaces are not just neutral spaces. The choices we make in the work that we do have implications, whatever those choices are. And so we can't be entirely neutral in this work. There's no such thing as a completely objective historian.
Not at all.
So I do want to come back and talk about COVID in a second, but more about your personal journey at Birmingham, and what are the path? What is the path of your career that led you to Mitchellville?
As I continued to do things in Birmingham, and then end up, I started as the head of education. Basically, I ran the education department for 15 out of those 18 years. They put me in a leadership position really quickly because Angela moved up to a position. And so, it's funny to look back on those early years, because I know PJ probably wanted to throw me through a plate glass window some of those times. We laugh about it now because he's retired, and I still consider him a mentor. We can laugh about some of this stuff that happened with me as a young leader. Oh man, you can laugh about these things after the fact, but it's a growing situation. You're learning on the fly. I've never had a job that wasn't baptism by fire. So each position going up was the same kind of thing. But after a while, because he kept pushing us to do things and get out there, because the education department was the frontward face of what we were doing, I would spend more time on TV, more time on the radio, We started doing a blog. Would write certain pieces for Birmingham periodicals based on what was going on. So there was a lot of stuff going on. After Trayvon Martin, we had all these things that were happening. So there was opportunity to be on panels and do all this stuff. MSNBC, C-SPAN for like the anniversary of the church bombing in like 2013. So I became really, really synonymous with the organization. And this is not me trying to humble brag. This is how it was, because PJ was like, you got it, you go do it. And then after he retires, it just stays that way. And the organization and myself, we started doing this. Like, I can't be that synonymous with the organization that I'm not running, right? Because the compensation just wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, I'm working hard, and I got relatively young kids, and so and family, and my wife's like, man, you were there a lot, and I'm pulling weekends. I'm almost doing like some aspects of a deputy director in some cases, because something happens with staff, they're calling me to come out and take care of it. Not that nobody else would, but it was just like, hey, look, mine's right down the hallway. My door was right down the way from the security, so it was easy. And Mike, you can talk to these people. So that's because leadership is doing 30,000-foot things, and so technically they should have somebody that can come in and take care of that stuff. It just was happening a lot. And so after a while, I'm like, man, I got to do something different. I love this place. It has really make me the person I am. My kids grew up in it, in the organization. So many times after school, they were sitting out in a little table in our department doing the homework or whatever, and I'm in there trying to work. This is a daily occurrence. Everybody knew them, and but probably when I turned 40, I decided to create a 5-year. It sounds bad to say it. 5-year escape plan. Like, in 5 years, I would have given my staff all of these, all the things necessary, just in case it's time I can get out. So 5 years, I can get out and feel good about what I've left behind. Right? You got this information. You can do this. You can do this job. You can take over doing this. Boom. So my 5-year plan, I started losing some of the staff that I thought was going to be there to do some of this stuff, because they got better opportunities, make more money, whatever. And I'm like, okay, this is complicating things just a little bit, but we're going to keep it moving. And then about two and a half years into it, I found out about Mitchellville. And I honestly, to tell you the truth, Robbie, I was going to think about leave the field. I've been in it for a while, and a lot of that exposure thing that I was telling you about, it's like, shoot, man, I'm looking at these pundits on TV. I can do that. I'm talking about this stuff all the time. So I was looking at a American Studies program at UNC Chapel Hill. It was going to do, race and politics, race and culture, and I was going to go get the doctorate and jump into academia. Like, man, I've done enough K-12 to last me a lifetime, even though it's indirect. I might do the college thing, right? And so I was looking in and doing something like that, and then the Mitchellville thing pops up. I also was looking at a Library of Congress gig that I think I was perfect for, but an administration that will remain nameless and shut down all that hiring after I turned my application in. And so, yeah, I'll leave that alone. And so Mitchell pops across my desk. And I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. And I actually talked to somebody on the search committee that I didn't know he was involved. I had met him at a Smithsonian Affiliates conference in 2015. And he's on the search committee. And I actually was on vacation in New Orleans. And I'm in the French Quarter with my wife and a couple that we were really close with. And I'm talking to this guy about 45 minutes. in a courtyard in the French Quarter. And I was like, I think I'm gonna try for this. And so found out about all the things that are involved, the fact that this community I'd never heard of existed, that William Lloyd Garrison and Clara Barton and Harriet Tubman had a connection to the Mitchellville story. And I didn't know anything about any of this stuff. It was really intriguing. It was a chance to build something from scratch. It was a chance to be an executive director for the first time. So I went through this marathon interview process, and they offered me the job. And so I moved my kids from the only place they'd ever known to the Low Country, South Carolina. And that was 4 years ago. And so far, so good. I can actually start seeing the horizon line for some of the stuff that we want to get done here. And trying to raise $22.8 million. It's a little daunting. I've never done anything like that before. But we do have a strategy. And because I had all that time being at a nonprofit where you had to piecemeal and make things happen, we set it up in stages. So there are aspects of the park we can get built as we raise the money that may help us raise the rest of the money. So that's my mindset. Things like this don't happen all at once, but we're being very aggressive and ambitious with it. And hopefully the next 3 to 5 years, we got some buildings that we can snip a ribbon and open up.
That's amazing. So what is your job like on a day-to-day basis? What do you do?
Oh, man. A little bit of everything. I have a very small staff. It's myself, one other full-time person. I got about 3 to 4 part-time people. My board is great, which is, I've been blessed with that. My board chair, who unfortunately this is her last year, but she's going to roll over into my campaign chair, so I won't lose her, which is great. But I can literally do anything during the course of a day. Like, we had 23 acres of property. So there's archaeology that we've had on site off and on for the last 4 years. And my archaeologist, Catherine Siebert, I'm actually about to lose her to New South. But I know I could, because this grant is running out, and so she's got to eat. Fortunately, they made a determination whether, and I think there's some shrewdness in there, because they might want to get some contract work from us. But they decided, instead of sending her to Georgia, they're going to keep her in Columbia, which is only a hop, skip, and a jump up the road. That'll help. So I might be out there standing around a pit where they're pulling objects out. Then I got to go talk to a elected official, or go to a meeting at the town or the county where we're trying to, I'm wrestling to get property out there. I'm working to get some MOUs done, so we have a long-standing agreement for managing stuff. Then I might be able to have to do a tour. I got to come to a panel conversation. Then I also might be in the park knocking wasp nests off of one of our facades out there. So we got a couple of facades of buildings along with some interpretive panels right now. So it's literally doing anything. Like our Juneteenth festival, I was actually out there trying to help them build the stage to get ready for this thing, because it's trying to catch up. So that's been my work life forever. Like, I don't mind the grunt work. And I'm at a time where I should not be doing grunt work, right? But it's nonprofit, man. You do whatever has to be done. And so I'm legitimately doing whatever has to be done, whether or not that's going to run to Sam's Club and get some water for the event we're doing with kids, or sitting and reading stories in the park underneath the tree. We're going to do whatever possible to get things done. So here recently, I spent a lot of my time working on strategy for an upcoming campaign. We're still in the feasibility stage of it. We got a great working relationship with the Compass Group. Robert Bull and his team are helping us pull things together. So we feel really good about that. And we're roughly about over halfway into the first year. And we got a good strategy together. But at any moment, I may have to up and jump and do something else. And it just comes with the territory. Fortunately, my knees still work, and I got a little bit of energy. Uh, I'm passionate about the mission because, I mean, Mitchellville has had a couple of starts and stops. It's too part of a story. The Army kind of rubber stamped this thing. This is a chance where people, Africans in America, had a chance to be citizens of something for the first time, and it's too important of a story. And we're just 2 hours away from Charleston, which 25 to 50%, depending on what scholar you listen to, can trace their lineage. 25%, 50% of African Americans can trace their lineage to South Carolina, specifically Charleston. And so that just adds another dimension to what we're trying to pull off. We're in the middle of the Gullah Geechee corridor, like the middle of it. And then the Reconstruction Area Monument, brand new, is right up the street. There's a lot of conversations about Reconstruction and the beginnings of people, of African Americans being here in this area, and the timing is good for us. And so we feel emboldened by the timing, and we've been able to do a lot of really cool things over the last 4 years, but it's a lot of work to do. And I'm committed to, trying to cut that ribbon.
So you're obviously raising a lot of money. Your organization is a 501c3. Where does most of your funding right now for the work that you do, where does that come from? Is it public dollars? Is it grant money? Is it straight up fundraising? Everything?
Everything morally and ethically sound. We are doing. We have probably received about $315,000 from the state of South Carolina since 2018 to do infrastructure. We've gotten a lot of money from the county. We just reached last year, were able to secure, as part of a resolution, we had to get the master plan done first. That was a $250,000 project that came from the county. And we were able to work some things out, thanks to former mayor of the area, David Bennett, and some others, to secure a resolution that would give us $575,000 after the fact. We got that last year. And that money is helping us to do all of these things. Like that state of South Carolina money is helping us do this archaeological project, along with some money from the National Trust for Historic Preservation from last year. And so grants, donations, government support, a lot of government support right now. Accommodation tax in this area, because Hilton Head is like the tourist space in South Carolina. So they get a lot of, there's probably $5 million of accommodation tax available for nonprofits to apply for. Every year we've been able to secure a decent amount of money each year from a tax dollars to support programs that we're doing around marketing and trying to get the word out there, to do things like our Juneteenth program, general project marketing, things that help us get the word out about this organization, because they're trying to get heads in beds. There are 2.6 million people that come to Hilton Head every year, which is a lot of folks. For our island, it's only like 12 miles long. So we're still in the high season right now. But the thing that Mitchellville would be able to do is to support business and income revenue on the shoulder seasons, which is like November, December, January, early February, because we think people will still come to our organization even though they can't go to the beach after we get things built. And so, we feel good about the financial impact that we'll have in the area. And to kind of to put a bow on the money situation, when I'm talking to people who are thinking about impact and why they should support, one of the things I'm telling them is, in regards to South Carolina, because it's not just the region, but just South Carolina in particular, African-American leisure travelers, just one subset. We're not talking about the Civil War buffs and the history buffs, just this one subset, spent $104 billion on travel in 2019. Billion. Okay. Currently, the state of South Carolina is only seeing like 2.4 billion of that. And there's so much history in this corridor. And I think we can be a catalyst to up that. And that's, just a small investment on this part will bring people here. Yeah, there's a bunch of folks. Again, I'm just staying in this subset. There's a bunch of Black people who've never gone to Hilton Head because the preconceived notions about what Hilton Head is, retirement, beach, golf, tennis, right? But we're offering something that's going to bring people here who are doing these civil rights tours, who are doing these history heritage tours, and we're trying to trace their lineage. The amount of people that are coming in and out of the South to learn about their background or to try to trace history. And so we got something here that people will be interested in. And so that's helped us because the area has figured out that tourism is the big deal in this state. So they figured out that cultural heritage tourism is the next wave. And that's helped us to get some of the funding that we've gotten over the last 4 years as well. Plus, it's a compelling project. So now if I can just convince some of these multinational corporations to get involved with us. But we have some targets out there, some national targets. We have a national strategy to try to pull in some funds, and just recently had a large meeting with a not to be named organization, and I got to do follow up with the foundation to see if they'll support us. But it could yield fruit that will allow us to use that to go after some more funding. So we've been fortunate, very, very fortunate, but the timing is also good.
There's so much I want to talk to you about, and we're going to have to kind of bring this to a close, but I want to shift gears for just a second and have you talk about your experience and history with the Association of African-American Museums, AAAM, and your relationship to the organization today.
Absolutely. I first got exposed to AAAM probably in, I don't know, this was 1999 when they were in Birmingham. I'm losing track of this, but early on in my career, they came to Birmingham, and I was like, oh man, this is great. Then I had a chance because, again, I'm going to keep talking about Dr. Pijo. He was really big on professional development. And so if he could send us to conferences or help us to go, he would. And I had opportunity to go to quite a few AAAMs early on. And then it kept meeting people. And it's funny now because I'm thinking about folks like Tim Barber. Like me and Tim met in 2008 when we were both grunts. And now we're both, EDs here in 2021. And it was just cool to see the people that were trying to learn when I got involved. Now they're running organizations that they've got these positions, and we're making longstanding relationships, and the networking is really cool. So then I can't remember if it was Marion or Cheryl Spicer, Marion McGee or Cheryl Spicer. Somebody talked me into being on a program committee some years ago. And I'm like, oh, sure, whatever. I didn't know that meant I could never leave. But I was signing my life away to the program committee for the conference after that. And of course, you and I got to really spend a lot of time together doing program committee stuff. And I just developed a love for the organization. I think they're doing such tremendous work. And I always got a lot out of the conference. It felt like family reunion. You start seeing these faces that you remember from last year, and then you start doing collaborations during the course of the year, and we just needed that. And that's been necessary for the over 40 some years that it's been around. So there's this camaraderie, this brother sisterhood that we needed to support ourselves with. And so again, when Cheryl's like, hey, you want to join board? And I'm like, man, I'm doing a lot of this new project. I don't know, but like, I got a lot of love for this organization. So sure, okay, I'll do that. And then being on the board has been such a rewarding experience for me. And I'm trying to be as open and available to the staff and our executive director as much as possible, and try to be involved in as many things as I can, because I remember what this organization did for me. The people put me in touch with, those folks who looked out for me after the fact. So I'm really keen on mentorship, and I probably have done too much of this in the last couple of years. That I probably got about 5 or 6 mentees, and I don't know if that's a high number considering what I'm trying to build here, but they've come to me through AAAM, and if we can help to spur the same kind of love and support that I got early on, then I think we're doing something that'll help the field be where it needs to be. So I'm glad to be working with you on the board. I really appreciate this. And I think I told you one time before that I really learned a lot about the organization from you. And I'm not just saying that to gas your head. I really mean that. So thanks for the support.
You're making me feel like you did with Dave Driscoll, blowing me up. I will give you just one personal piece of advice. If you want to get off the program committee, just host the conference. Great route to get off the program committee.
I know I can't do that right now, man. But that is a good piece of advice. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's the easiest way to get off the program committee. They don't ask you to do that.
I'm gonna stay there.
You mentioned a lot of people. Who are the folks, Dr. Pijot, who've impacted you the most in the Black Museum field?
So of course, Dr. Pijot, I mentioned him a lot during this conversation, but Angela Fisher Hall gave me my first break. She believed in this little snot-nosed kid coming out of Hampton. And even though she worked me like I was on the salt mine, I learned a lot being in that situation. And I can't say enough about that. Dr. Deborah Mack, who allowed me to ask her all kinds of questions, and just I consider her like Obi-Wan Kenobi. We have this thing, she calls me Reverend and I call her Bishop, and that's the kind of relationship that we have. But also not as direct as those, but Margaret Burroughs and the John Flemings of the world, these people who I had a chance to be somewhat around, like when Dr. Pijot was leading the organization some years ago. I had a chance to just kind of be around these folks because he's leading it. We indirectly involved in some planning, as staff he trusted, and I just learned so much from these people, and Juanita Moore, and Kinshasa Conway. I mean, there's those luminary for me. Barry Gaither, that these are folks that I learned a lot from, and I want to have that same kind of impact on people. Not that it's saying my name like, oh man, I was so great, but just even if it's just from the the standard that I'm trying to set, or just seeing things that we're doing, and also maybe stuff that they look at me and say, I don't want to do that. That's fine too. You can influence all kind of ways, but those are the people that stick out for me in the field, who I might have walked up to and asked a question, and they gave me time. They actually gave me time and talked to me. And so I can't deny that. And of course, I got to go back to Mary Lou Holgren and Jean Zeiler and Vanessa Thaxton Ward from Hampton, Jeffrey Bruce, these folks who really got me going. And so those are my influences. And I'm just proud to have the opportunity to have known these people and have them actually care enough about me to spend 5 minutes in a hallway at a conference or whatever, just to say, yeah, well, keep up the good work and doing what you're doing. And so, yeah.
What's your vision for the future of this Black Museum field?
I think we're in good hands. I see the door open for more interaction from the young people than it was when I was young in this. And again, no knock on the old heads, but I think there was this feeling that they had to keep a rein on it while I was building. But I think that the new energy I see from the emerging museum professionals, who are fearless in a lot of ways that maybe we weren't, to create some change in the field. I feel good about that. I feel good about the fact that they're coming into these organizations with a real love for the mission of these organizations and trying to help some of these organizations change for the better. And it's imperative that the leadership listens, because we already deal with this elitist, tag for all museums, whether black, white, or indifferent. So already dealing with this. And if we can just pay attention to what these young people are saying to us to help bring in these new audiences and bring in these people who are open to learning, and then providing the subject matter that will appeal to them and yet still keep the mission intact. So I'm encouraged by what the young folks have to offer and the parameters that they're breaking and pushing, because some of them need to be broken, and opening the door for us to have a new way of thinking about this field that we're working in, that we've spent our lives pouring into. So I'm encouraged about what they have to offer. I'm also encouraged that even though the last 18 months have been rough personally for us, that the horizon, I think, will open the door for expanded funding, for expanded visitorship, because people have been forced to pay attention a little bit more. Us sitting down for that long period of time made us kind of look at things we didn't normally look at. And so I think there's some benefit as we hopefully move out of this situation, hopefully soon, that we can be better. We've learned from some things we used to do that we don't do anymore, but also that the public at large will pay attention to us just a little more. So I think the horizon line looks sunny. We just got to make sure we keep moving.
So the last question is really three questions in one. We can kind of take it in parts. For the students in the class and people who want to enter this field and into this work, one, what are the biggest misconceptions, challenges, especially in the context of COVID-19, and maybe how has your work changed in that context? But also, what are the biggest rewards and what are your recommendations, three, for those people? So challenges, rewards, recommendations.
Challenges is going to be resources. I think one of the things we got to be careful about, even though you have more people paying attention, it still doesn't mean they're going to give. Right? So we got to be creative. We got to be creative in how we appeal to donors and visitors when we get through this thing in COVID. And we got to adjust the way we do things. So some things that used to happen before COVID, we got to get rid of. It can't stay, because this is this cliche used all the time. This is a new normal, and we've got to adjust quickly, and we got to be proactive. So I think the field itself is going to change a lot, and we just have to be ready and proactive in doing the right thing, so that as you go into the field, you got to take this COVID mindset, right, that we've been in, where we've kind of been siloed, and figure out how we can use that to benefit the organizations and to benefit your own personal growth. So the skills that you picked up while you were sitting home, you got to figure out a way you can incorporate those into the work field. If you picked up something new, like some people learn new languages because they were stuck in the house. I mean, that sets you apart. And now you're fluent in Spanish. It makes you more attractive to people to bring it. They may want to bring you in to work. So as far as, let's say, it was challenges, and then give me the second
rewards and recommendations.
Rewards. So I think the rewards are, because the world has changed so much, there's so much opportunity to chart your own path and create a course. You can also, along with being proactive there, I think there's opportunities for you to bring something new to a potential employer they're not even thinking about. Again, out of COVID times, like there's so much virtual content that's been created, and there's opportunities for this generation, which is way more tech savvy than we ever had to be. Like I still remember, dial-up internet. right? And so they at work, and so they have an opportunity to do all these things that they've been able to do with these social media campaigns that we see out there. And like you could shift the impact of an organization just through like TikTok and Instagram, like the eyes that are on these things. So take some of this stuff that you are really good at, that you had to even get better at when you were stuck at the house. And I think you can transform an organization with the reward is, hey, you are the person I need to put in this situation because I've seen you do these things. And my recommendations are, don't get discouraged. Like, I got so many denials when I first tried to get out there. It's just, you just can't get, nothing worth having, right? Well, let me get this right. If it's worth having it, it's worth working for it, right? So it's going to take time. It's going to take time. So I think that the biggest recommendation is don't let a no be a stop sign, right? Don't let a no be a stop sign. You're probably going to get a couple of no's. Man, let me tell you, the museum of the National Museum of American Indian was just opening up when I was coming up. Oh man, I mean, they wouldn't even give me a like Dear John letter. Like, I sent like 3 different resumes, applications to the American Indian. They were just like, we're not even going to know. We don't even acknowledge your existence, Ahmad. So like, and that was the case for a lot of things that I was trying to apply for. They just wouldn't even say no. They just would ignore me. But don't snuff your light before you know what kind of candle you are. You got to be able to take that and keep it moving. So you got to have a bulldog mindset when it comes to going after a gig. And if it's a no, you got to keep it moving. And if you have a chance to get your foot in the door and you're there, learn everything you can and make yourself indispensable. Quick story, then we can shut it down. I got to the place, we're still doing bulk mail when I got to Birmingham in 1999. And there was only one guy there who was doing the bulk mailing. And one day I saw him doing this stuff. I'm like, because of my thing, I'm going to learn I learned how to do the cash register. I learned how, in the booth, even though I tried to duck the booth. But that's how I got some comp time, because we all had to do a shift on weekends. And so when people didn't want it, I took it. Yeah, give me this extra money and the comp time. The comp time was the thing. I could just take a day off. So I learned how to do all the things. And he's in there in the room doing bulk mail by himself. And I'm like, hey, you need help? Yeah. So he showed me how to do all the stuff to send out a newsletter. And then when he left, guess who was the only person there who knew how to do it? So that was it. Shoot, we got it. Ahmad just doing this stuff on his own. And so learning as much as you can to make yourself indispensable. Make it hard for them to say, if there's a cut coming, it's like, nah, we can't get rid of him. We can't get rid of her. You see what she's been doing? And I just tried to do all the things. I wanted to suck it all in as a sponge. And so don't be too big for a job. Don't convince yourself that you are too good to do something at the level. Because I did everything in that place except run it. I mopped floors. I ran down to the basement to grab tables and chairs and do programs. You just have to be open, and that will yield so many benefits in the long run, because you're going to remember something down the line because you helped do this one thing. Like, oh shoot, I know how to do this already. And the next time you get to another place, there's something that you can put on your resume. Maybe not bulk mail, but something that sets you apart from other places. So my recommendation is to don't let the no put a stop sign in your way. And if you get in the door, learn as much as you can about everything you can at that organization. so that when it comes time for people to get promotions or to be considered to go to stuff like AAAM conferences, they're gonna look at you because you put in the work.
That's great advice. Thanks, Ahmad. I really appreciate you. Grateful for your friendship and collegiality. Ahmad Ward, thanks very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.